welcome back to the CatBeyond podcast. I'm Kat. I hope that you're having a beautiful morning, afternoon, night, wherever you are in the world, and that you're taking good care of yourself in this very intense and strange time. Strange year, obviously, but I do feel that we're coming to a strange crescendo. I don't even think we'll necessarily reach the crescendo this month, but it is building, and I think in this way where we've all been like, okay, like the crest of the wave, like the wave has to break at some point, right? Like it can't just keep getting bigger, right? Like there's a limit to this, and yet in its own ways it keeps getting bigger. I'm not saying it keeps getting worse, or that we're not learning to sort of adapt or shore up to the wave that's coming. But I don't feel that the tsunami has necessarily come ashore yet. And that's a strange feeling to have approaching. Strange to feel something so big and momentous about to happen. But nobody, like no astrologer, no scientist, no politician, no guru can tell you exactly how to prepare yourself for what's going to happen, because I think that this energy very specifically is unpredictable and doesn't want you to be comfortable thinking like, oh, well, you know what, this other thing happened before and I did this and I was fine, so no matter what happens, I'll be fine. I do think it's true that no matter what happens, we'll be fine, we'll adapt, and we'll be the better for it. I think that's true, but I don't think that the universe wants us to go in with this brazen, almost like senior laziness, when you're a senior in high school and you're like, oh, I got this, like this is old hat for me, this is a cakewalk. I don't think that the universe wants us to feel that this is too easy. I think it wants to keep us on our toes, and I think it wants us to keep sort of dancing a little bit closer and closer to the edge. It wants us to be nervous. It wants us to be a little bit scared, because it wants us to do things that we don't feel ready for yet, that we're unsure if we have what it takes, if we can really handle what we're trying to bring upon ourselves. Because I think a lot of us are really asking for a lot and trying to do a lot, intending for big, massive change in our lives and in the world, and for many of us trying to bridge that, to make it so that the things that we accomplish, the big moves in our lives we're trying to make, that those moves affect the collective positively. So we're asking for so much to change, and I think the universe is like, yeah, but you didn't think this would be easy, did you? Like, you have to be afraid just a little bit to really stay alert and sort of wild and animated and alive throughout this process. We can't just, I think, calmly, contently say, like, I want world peace, and like, sit there in this complete state of calm the entire time. I think that there's a part of us, like certain levels of us, that are allowed to stay in that very grounded state of peace, maybe like at our soul, spiritual, divine levels. But the more human aspects of us, they're adapting and aligning themselves to what we're calling in from the top down, from the divine down into the physical etheric. So when I do a session, I go through 7 layers of a bunch of things. Like if I'm dealing with your energy center, which I'm trying, this is sort of a little aside here, a little tangent, but I'm playing with the terminology that I use, because I've started to feel that the term chakra or chakra is, I don't want to call it cultural appropriation, but it's close, and I feel like it's a bit of commandeering and co-opting of like a cultural belief system. And secondary to that, I think that just some of what I do feels so different from that realm. It's very like parallel in certain ways, but I think the way that I sort of like manifest and express and work through what they're talking about in terms of chakra systems, I do it a little bit differently, and so I feel like it'd be dishonoring to say like that's what I'm working with. So I've taken to calling them energy centers. I've really thought of them for a while that way, but most people now are familiar with the term chakra, and so I think that's why I've used that terminology, but it just doesn't sit right. It doesn't resonate with me. And I feel like in some ways it's limiting and exclusive in a certain way, because I don't feel that you have to be consider yourself a spiritual person, and I don't feel like you have to be even on the super like woo-woo spectrum, very like out there aspect of life in order to tap into your energy centers. So in that way I feel like it can be kind of exclusive to people who don't really speak that language and don't want to, and I think that's fine that I don't think that they need to if they don't want to. So if you hear me talking about energy centers from now on, just know that's what I mean, and I'm going to try to make it as clear as possible as to what I'm talking about. So when I'm going through anybody's energy center, I'm going through 7 levels, starting with the physical etheric, then going to the mental, emotional, personality, soul, spiritual, and divine levels. And I can work with those 7 levels on organs, glands, bones, anything in your body, anything around your body, etc. And the interesting thing is that very often, and especially recently, I've been finding that it's so common for the issue to be somewhere in the first 4 levels, either physical, etheric, mental, emotional, or personality, and that sometimes something that seems really off is actually really harmonious on the soul, spiritual, divine level. I was actually working with an older man recently, and I know that he's having some contention in certain areas of his life, and etc. And so I didn't really know exactly what I would see when I went into his energy. And it was so strange because despite what's going on for him in his physical world, his soul and spirit levels especially, they were singing, they were joyous. It wasn't just harmony, it was joy is the biggest word I can find for it. It was just so lit up, so bright. And I said to him after our session, I said, I get the sense that you're starting to develop this really clear picture around a life purpose that you're just sort of tapping into now, and that some of what's going on for you is this nervousness around whether you'll actually be able to accomplish that in this life with the time that you have left, and in an older body. And I don't even know in terms of like what that sort of soul purpose is. I didn't ask, because I didn't feel like that in this specific situation that it was my place to delve too far into that. But he said, yeah, that's absolutely right. I'm being given an opportunity to do this thing that I'm really excited about, that would be like so amazing, but I'm nervous if I can physically do it, and like I think I can, but it's really going to take a lot of work. And it's so interesting. Like what was coming up for him were physical pains in places that he had gotten injured. I think it was probably like 55 or 60 years ago. And just things that he, maybe on a rainy day had felt irritation with, but lately had been feeling more often when he was waking up. And so it's very interesting that as he is getting closer to moving forward with this opportunity, and again, like I said, I didn't ask the specifics. It seemed like it was something that was kind of personal to him. And so I like to let people, have their secrets, have their private things. I don't like to press if I feel that somebody's, wanting to hold a card close to their chest. I don't want to press them to reveal it to me, because if they wanted to, they would. So anyway, I did get the sensation, though, that it meant a lot to him, and that's what he was saying. My point is, I was surprised at how bright and joyous that part of his energy was. And I find that a lot with people, is like their soul and their spirit, their divine level, they're clear as day. They're bright, they're shiny. They have a very clear directive and will. And sometimes it's that that the person's doubts or their emotions of like, who am I to do this, and can I, and how will I, and what will that look like, and how will that change my life? There are so many of those questions that come up when you're trying to bring, again, from that divine connection where we get some kind of divine insight or intuition as to information or what we're supposed to do, or just like a sense, an instinct. And then we bring it down one by one through these levels, all the way down to the physical etheric, where it can really manifest and be brought to reality. And that's where I would say, like, the densest and most common layer is where I find like a misalignment or a lack of harmony in somebody's field. Secondarily, I would say that the mental and emotional get caught up, like, I wouldn't say easily, but it is easy, especially for like the things that matter more to people, for there to be a lot of emotional things to work through that are sort of like making things stagnant or stuck on the more human levels of like the mental and the physical etheric. So that was just, it wasn't my intention going into this episode to go on that tangent, but I'm really happy I did, because I feel like especially the next couple months, because let's dip into like a little bit of the astrology right now. I guess I haven't really even mentioned that, but, and honestly, that isn't really the focus of this episode. The base intention of this episode is to talk about December astrology, but this month it's going to be different. My energy is a little bit different today, and I have a lot of things going on, like with my family and with certain health things with my family, and everything's okay. Like, don't worry about me or my family, please. If you want to pray for us, please do. That is always appreciated, but everything is okay. I just know that like some of my mental energy is devoted to that. But going into this episode, even I for myself, I'm trying not to focus this month too much on the specifics, the day-to-day feelings around the individual daily or weekly transits or anything like that. And in a sense, I'm trying not even to assume or to be too biased towards like, okay, well, the 16th and 17th are going to be intense and the 21st is going to be intense. Like, I don't want to presume what those are going to be like. And frankly, I have a feeling that they're going to be quite beautiful, even if they are intense. And I really am praying for just so much positive change in all of our lives. For myself and for all of you and for all of us in the collective, I truly, truly hope that a lot of what's going on now will find a way to resolve itself over the coming 6 months. It's strange because, according to predictions and according to a lot of, scientific predictions, or at least reasonably scientific, the scientists aren't really presuming that this is going to just go away overnight or go away necessarily in the 6 months. I don't think that that's what they're planning for. And astrologers, same thing. They don't really presume that this is going to ease up super soon. And I guess, presumably they're right. Call me the eternal optimist, but I do feel like we're shifting into such beautiful energy that I do hope that the physical comes to meet that beautiful energy that I think we're really like walking into. I just see us being enveloped in so much fresh air. It's funny because we're going into Aquarius, which is fixed air, and some people describe it as submarine, like that there's a fixed amount of air. But at least in Florida, I associate and always have associated Aquarius season with the breeze, with this light, bright, really divine feeling air. I mean, I'm an air sign, I'm a Gemini, and so I love air seasons, but there is something about Aquarius that, oh my gosh, I live for it in certain ways. Like when end of January comes, and especially when February comes, walking out into the air in Florida, it's really the only time of year that we get what we would call cold. It's obviously much more cold elsewhere in like all of America, but here our cold season tends to be more so like February, like end of January, February is really where it gets quite nippy here. But I feel like in Capricorn season we ascend to this great mountainous height. We've like climbed so much, in Sagittarius season we've really like readied our body. We've known that we have hunting to do, that we have our warrior duty with the, as the archer, we have to be really nimble and be able to change directions really quick and be able to take aim and shoot, like ready, steady, aim and fire at a moment's notice. And like any like real skilled archer, if you've seen like the Hunger Games or something, they have to be able to have their bow ready to go, ready to pull out another one, turn around to shoot an opponent, and like make that snap split-second decision of where to shoot, and to account for all of the environmental aspects and elements and variables around them. So there's so much to do with the body in Sagittarius season and readying it for quick movement. And then that sort of training allows us to ascend to the top of the mountain in Capricorn season and feel really grounded to the earth, even at a great height above sea level, to know that we still have that earth underneath us. And then Aquarius season comes through and it allows us to fly from that great height. And with flying, you have to know that, like, I feel like this is very intuitive. Any of you guys will be like, yeah, that makes absolute sense. That if you jump from a really low height, you can't really gain enough air to really grab that breeze, to grab that air force and ride it with like a full wingspan and just soar through the sky. But when you jump from a great height, you have a little while to sort of adjust your, I was going to say adjust your sails, but adjust your wings and really catch that air fully and take your time coming back down to sea level. And at that point, you're kind of, you're sort of descending down into the Pisces water, the Piscean water, right after Aquarius season. And then we start the whole thing all over again, where, life started in the sea, supposedly anyway. And that's, in a way, that's quite Piscean. And then there's sort of like a spark of life in that, in Aries season, that spark catalyzes this great rapid evolution. And then Taurus, we come upon the earth. And anyway, and so there's many cycles to that. And my point being that Aquarius has so much lightness to it. I forget where I even started with this tangent, to be honest, but I think, again, my point was, I don't want to dig too much into these specific astrologies. I want to enjoy just the feeling around me. I want to enjoy Sagittarius season as a whole. Yes, there are a lot of Aquarian elements to the Sagittarius season, and there will be so many to Capricorn as well. And there will also be there's just a lot of mixing this year in these seasons. Like, most of these seasons have not been typical I don't want to say pure, but it's like they're being very influenced by the signs around them. Like a few episodes ago when I was talking about the very Scorpionic Libra season, it was, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, there was so much Scorpio energy that by the time we got to Scorpio, that felt different to me. Scorpio season felt really different to me, and it had certain Virgo elements to me, at least like sort of to my alchemization of that energy. But oh man, was it incredible. I mean, it was a ride that I don't necessarily want to go on again. But I don't know. There's honestly so many thoughts going through my head. I just to sort of like give you where I'm at without, betraying my Scorpio moon. About halfway through, like, I had a pretty emotional, not so much for me, but for those around me, like the first half of Scorpio season was a lot about like my emotions of taking care of other people, and my cat was having surgery. Like, and again, I hope that it's okay with you guys if I delve into like personal details. I actually was told by multiple people that they want me to talk more about myself, and that is in a way hard for me, because even though I am quite, my mom said it this way, she was like, you're really private, but you expose yourself a lot. And she didn't just mean like physically in terms of that I dance with like, like a good amount of skin showing, but she's right. Like I open myself, but only to a certain point, and then it's very closed to all but like a very small amount of people. Like you'd be shocked at how small it is, that like really inner circle. Anyways, so my point is I hope it's okay if I talk about personal things with you guys, and I feel like it's just, if you're getting information from me, and also potentially if you're looking to work with me at some point, I think it's only fitting that like if you're going to learn, or if I'm going to learn about you, that you have some context of me and like my energy and where I'm at. So again, without betraying my Scorpio moon, I was taking care of my cat. I was concerned for a couple family members, trying to do what I can, but also trying to, like work on my business while all of these things are like wanting my attention, and I'm wanting to give as much of my attention as I can. So I've felt that some of my, like sort of my heart has been pulled, because I want to give more energy to my family and even to certain of my friends, but I also really feel such a duty to myself and to working on my career and really getting that foundationally solid, which I made so much progress this year, and especially over the past few months. But like, Saturn's about to leave Capricorn, and so I feel like there's just some elements that I'm really wanting to change and perfect and go over to prepare for Aquarius season. But what was my point? Oh yeah, where my energy is at, right? So Scorpio season it was so intense. There was so much love, so much beauty, so much beautiful light coming in. I was so like emotional in the most beautiful way, where I was crying like happy tears at almost everything. My heart felt so open the entire time, and I absolutely loved it. But what I will say is I was also really tapped into, a lot, into a lot of people, into energies, and that's not in any sort of like, oh, I wish I wasn't so connected or sensitive. I love being sensitive, and I'm okay with it, and I feel like I never want to push away that sense, and it's something that I've talked to clients about, because a lot of my clients are just really sensitive people. I think that's like who I attract, because that's who I am too. People who are really sensitive and really take on a lot of almost like responsibility or like a feeling of responsibility for the collective, and like there's just this, I told you, like I said, I didn't really feel like we were going to get into the specifics of the astrology. I do, before this episode is over, I want to get into some of the specific lunar transits, because I feel like that's actually what's most interesting to me and maybe most most resourceful for you in terms of like what to do about the emotionality that we'll all be feeling in December, because all of December is within the eclipse wormhole. Like, we're having the eclipse, well, I'm recording this on the 29th, we're having the eclipse tomorrow morning very early on the 30th, and then we're having another eclipse on the 14th. So all of December is like really strongly within this eclipse portal. And so there's just so much coming to light and so much lunar energy that I feel like the moon is kind of saying like, hey, I'm running the show, I made the schedule, and I'm meeting up with this guy, and we're teaming up and offering you this, and then I'm meeting up with this other planet, we're teaming up to offer you this. So if you've seen my post on Instagram, and if you don't follow me on Instagram, I'm at CatBeyond. And so the post about December astrology, if you swipe, the second slide is about December lunations. And I put like sort of a little cheat sheet as to what energy center and what sort of themes and ideas are like most illuminated at each one of these moon conjunctions or lunations. And so, yeah, I would encourage you to look at those just to sort of like tap into those energies on those days. But, right, I guess I've avoided talking about myself long enough. I went on this tangent. So my point is, Scorpio season was quite emotional, but every day I just felt so grateful that I was okay in order to have the energy to devote to something other than my physical or mental health. Yes, I really did work on both of those, but like many of you, and especially at this point, might know, I dealt with chronic pain for so many years and like serious health issues. And not that I have zero health issues now, of course I'm working on things still, but I don't have pain anymore, and I don't have things that like, like my knees aren't killing me every day. It's not difficult for me to walk without feeling pain. Like, I don't feel pain when I walk. So in that sense, my energy isn't being drained into constantly trying to fix my physical body anymore. And so I just, at every moment, everything I was doing, I was like, thank you, God, thank you so much that I have this time and energy to work through this, that I didn't feel like I was drowning in all of what was being put on my plate, because even though it was hard to fit it all, and I don't feel like I fit it perfectly, I didn't feel, like I said, I didn't feel like I was drowning in it. And I do feel like it was very tiring. I don't know if you guys felt the same thing. I felt like Scorpio season was really tiring. It asked a lot of us energetically. But I still came out of it like, you know what? I don't want to surrender. I'll never surrender to anybody but my highest self, and to, maybe to God. But other than that, I'll never surrender. And that sense of knowing that I'll never give up, I also felt so thankful for that. So the other aspect about what I dealt with was in Scorpio season was that about halfway through, I received information that that sort of colored some intuitive feelings I had around certain people. And it was so weird because I was like, but I don't know how to take this information. The information itself wasn't necessarily like concrete. It was just bits of information. It was no like full picture story of the truth. And the whole time I was wrestling with like the anxiety around like, if that were true, what that would mean, and like how would that affect me, and how would that affect that person, and how does that affect my life, and it shouldn't have. And I feel like the intuitive amongst you guys will kind of like understand what I'm not saying, and I feel like that's my general vibe, is like, you can pretty much pick up on what I'm not saying, and I don't like to be explicit with a lot of things. I like to, leave a few cards close to my chest. So anyway, I got really anxious about some of that, and furthermore, I didn't know if that information was really like true and what it meant, if anything. And the whole time I was like, yeah, I don't know if I believe what this information is indicating to me. I'm not sure about that. And finally, I think it was like within this last week, I got so anxious because the intuitive feelings I was feeling about this person, I can't even explain it to you. I felt so anxious, and I was getting acid reflux, which is not something I ever get, and this was only literally lasting a day, like to where the anxiety was getting just to such a head, and I was doing a lot of work on myself, a lot of work on the solar plexus, a lot of work on the organs that are governed by the solar plexus, and I was working on them like every day for a few days, and I was like, it's like wild that this stuff is all going on with me, but it's interesting always, like, because even though my physical body really didn't feel like necessarily all that bad, energetically I could pick up on that there was a lot of just a lot being released and processed in those organs, and so for me it was like the liver, the small intestines, the duodenum, the diaphragm, that whole area was really asking for a lot of attention and work, and so I gave that to it. And I do want to say, like, the solar plexus has been highlighted for almost everybody this year. It's definitely like one of the biggest themes, and I think it will continue to be a big point of healing for everybody for like at least the next year or two. So this, I think it was like the day before Thanksgiving, I finally just got like so anxious that I reached out to somebody for information, and I was like, I'm so sorry to ask, but like, can you like tell me what's going on with this person? And they truthfully like didn't have much information to give me about that person, but they like, I happened to ask, I think, at the right day, and and so I got some information, and I like checked up about it, and found out that like my intuition was correct, and the information that I had previously received that indicated that that indicated something else that was just strange. I don't know, like, if you want to say like not extraneous, but like an outlier in terms of like can't be explained, can't be made sense of, like why this person did that, if this other thing is still true, like don't understand. But it did fit more so with my intuition and like the dreams that I'd been having and the information I was getting in the dreams. So that's what's really quite interesting to me, is that the whole time, I think this year for me has been a lot about trusting my intuition, trusting my dreams. I know that this episode is very tangential, but I feel like those are the episodes that end up being the most fun for me, so I hope they are for you guys. But I think it was Pam Gregory. She's one of my favorite astrologers. If you guys want to watch her on YouTube, I love her so much. She's so classy and well-spoken, and like not at all like me in the sense of that I don't feel like she goes on tangents. She manages to be so organized in her thoughts and in her words. She's just very concise and clean, and I feel like, I'm a classic Gemini. I'm like all over the place, and I love it, but I also like learning from people who are very like crisp and clean. So she was talking about, really honestly saying what I was just saying, but just a little bit more concisely, that the information that we're receiving on a physical level, Mercury, is contradictory to some of the, or might be contradictory to some of the information that we're receiving in a divine way through either just our intuition or meditation or dreams especially, and that's more so ruled by Uranus. And she was like, and frankly, I would trust your dreams. I would trust your dreams over what you're being told in physical reality is the truth. And that resonated with me so much because again and again, I don't know why, but I have tried to convince myself to stay in some ways too much in reality because I can be so dreamy and, classic Gemini, I can be so head in the clouds. And I think I've always been a little bit, maybe not defensive, but maybe insecure about that because I just know a lot of really grounded people. And I think by some people I've felt quite misunderstood. Not so much the people big in my life right now, because I feel like I've really pulled close the people who I feel understood by, but throughout my life I've felt very misunderstood by people who just wanted me to be something that I wasn't. And I can be grounded and I can come back to earth when I need to, but my soul really shines brightest when I don't weigh myself down too much by what the physical shows, because I don't feel like that's the full picture of what truth or reality is. So this whole year, there's been this big lesson for me in trusting my dreams, trusting my intuition, and yet understanding that even if I am right, that sometimes it's a moot point as to my actions, where it can be okay, well, you were right about this thing, but there's still nothing to be done about it. You are correct about that person, that job, that opportunity, that those other people over there, that I can be right about those things, but they're not always mine to in any way control or affect. And finding the acceptance of that, of knowing something or knowing that something is wrong and knowing that it's not my job to fix it. A couple years ago, I started saying this quote, you can't save people from their karma. And I don't think anybody told me that. It just was this realization I came to literally maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I've noticed that if I get these intuitive senses about people, I want to save them from making mistakes. And anytime I've tried to do that, it doesn't really pan out that way, because if they don't learn the lesson, and same about us, about all of us, I'm not excluded from this. If somebody tries to save me from my karma, I didn't really learn the true lesson of what deep down is causing me to act in a certain way that results in something that I'm going to be oh man, I really wish that I had done something differently there. And so the Mars retrograde episode where I talked about the two, I think I mentioned that there were 2 opportunities that I didn't take. One of them, came back around. I took it. I'm so happy I did. But if somebody at the time had told me, you'll regret not doing this, I could not possibly have known or have learned what I learned from not taking that opportunity and realizing how bad it felt not to take that. That was a much deeper point of healing, because it pushed me to work through that on a deep level, and to really examine how fractally that fear of stepping into my power and claiming that I can do something that I've not done before, and something that's outside of my comfort zone, something that's outside of what people expect of me. And yeah, I don't think that it would have meant the same thing to me that first time if I had done the opportunity. It meant nearly as much as when I took that opportunity when it came back around this time. And it meant so much. Like, I cried so much out of happiness that I took this opportunity. And if it's not clear, I'm talking about the Palazzo and the presenting that at the Orlando Museum of Art. That was just such... I can't even begin to explain how much that felt like a divine point of coming full circle and coming to a point of completion. And it wasn't just satisfaction or fulfillment. It was like I felt like I had nourished myself in this way that I had been starving myself for a very long time. And to get to the point where you realize that you've been starving yourself from something that you truly want, and then to finally allow yourself to have it, it's an incredibly, I don't know that there's a word for it. It's just incredibly meaningful and emotional. And it's one of those moments where you realize, like, very definitively that you've healed something that has been hurting for a very long time. And it went deeper than the thing itself, like, it wasn't about that I got to show at a museum, like, that in many ways, like, that was just like a chill thing. It was maybe like 25 artists and like a nice little event that, if you follow me on Instagram, you saw a bunch of pictures about that. But it went so much deeper than the thing itself for me. Energetically, it meant so much. And so I was just, like, so proud of myself for allowing myself to do something that I felt I had been denying myself for so long. And so that's what Scorpio season was for me. It was just this beautiful allowing of myself to come through. It was me giving myself permission to step forward into something that I was unsure about. And fractally, I already feel that sort of like taking root in my system and transforming me in other capacities where I have been holding myself back and not giving myself permission to move forward with certain things that I just crave deeply, but have questioned maybe like my ability or my deserving or the sustainability of something. So that's just to sort of like give you insight as to where I'm at. I want this podcast to be more intimate. I think you guys sense maybe that, like, on Instagram I say a lot, but I'm really hesitant to go too deep and get too emotional, because I also feel like the platform itself, I like this medium of podcasting and being able to speak out loud about what's going on for me emotionally, instead of just putting it into a caption that has a character limit or something. I just want to be able to say what I want to say. So that being said, I'm guessing that a lot of people also went through really intense journeys in Scorpio season, and wherever you're listening to this, I would love to hear about any sort of transformation that you went through in Scorpio season, especially if this is on YouTube. Like, it's super nice to engage with you guys in the comments, and if you're on the other podcast platforms, then feel free to comment on an Instagram post or something like that. So yeah, let's get into the lunations, because I feel like what came up for us during Scorpio season, like I said, it for me, it came to a head, like a sort of clarity point, just a few days after the sun went into Sagittarius, where I'd been so emotional for 2-3 weeks, just really so anxious, and in a way that I swear to you, I've never experienced that before, that I can recall. It was doing weird things to me, it was just was was so strange for me to experience that level of emotional anxiety. Like, I'm a sensitive person. Of course I get anxious, but the specific way that felt to me was so beyond, and it was like constantly requiring me checking in with myself, doing energy work, adapting and sort of adjusting my energy work to say like, okay, well, that didn't seem to make as much of a difference. Let me try this. And so it was like, it really tried to get me out of a sort of rote daily prescription of doing one thing. Like, it wasn't a magic pill, one pill fits all panacea. It was like, what exactly does my body need today? What part exactly of my body wants attention, wants healing? And then the next day, again, asking those questions all over again and allowing the answer to be unique every single day. So then Sagittarius season came in with the clarity. I always find that Sagittarius season comes in with like a sense of clarity, sometimes a sense of vindication. This Sagittarius season has already though like given me a really mixed bag of things, which is so strange that it's like the balancing aspect is just like wild right now with karma, and I'm really just sitting in an observational point of that. But again, when I saw the lunations and how they play out, mostly over the last half of December, like about the 12th to the 29th, I was like, okay, so I think that we're going to be sitting with a bit more information, with a bit more processing for the next 12 or so days, and then we like really are able to dive deep into the I would say like the healing, but I mean like the sort of actualization of what we've processed, where we've been given time to acquire a lot of information, to do our best to analyze it, very Gemini. But then the second half of December, it's like, okay, so what are we going to do about that in order to heal ourselves and in order to make whatever truths or clarities we've come to make them work to our best interest and to our highest good and to the purpose that our soul has in this life. Because I do think that as we enter these very Aquarian times coming up very shortly, we have so much of an emphasis on collective healing and collective purpose and community and our part in the whole. I talked about it in a post recently that I think a lot of us are realizing that there's so much. We've been seeing it all year, all these problems with the collective and problems with the government and problems with like social apathy about certain things, thinking that we can't make a difference around them, and realizing kind of like how many questions we have about ourselves in relation to all these things that we're wanting to change within the collective. So there is this like lovely but delicate dance, like balancing dance between healing ourself and checking in with our sanity and our physical wellness in order to be able to play the part that we want to in collective progress and healing, which I think is something that I talked about back in like Virgo season with the Pisces full moon back then. So I think it's very fitting that as we come to another mutable full moon, and this one's a lunar eclipse, that we're asking a lot of these questions again about change and progress, which obviously are mutable sign things. So let's get into the lunations because they're so special. I'm going to take a little drink of water, and I suggest you do the same. And when I get back, we're just going to gently swim in the waters of this lunar healing month that we have ahead of us. I'm back. It's been like maybe 20 or 25 minutes, and I realized that I needed to like change up the vibe a little bit around me to get into, I guess a bit more of like a luxurious state, because I want to talk about this moon. And it's like the moon this month feels very sensual, very giving, very like just very very lovely, very doting. Like it really wants to give us the full package, like the whole sweet deal, and everything that the moon has to offer in terms of insight and intuition and connection with ourselves, and like illumination of our own truths inside, and then healing those shadows that we find within. So I lit an orange and clove scented candle. I turned out most of my lights. I got changed into pajamas, and I put on a nice little silk blouse, and I feel very cozy now. So I wanted to clarify one thing that I said, because I was reflecting on it a little bit in the past 20 minutes. When I was talking about the clarity that came in a few days after the Sag season and gave me at least perceivably the truth, or a few more like aspects of the truth. My acid reflux, which like I said, it lasted a day. I never ever have acid reflux. That's not something I ever deal with. So when that was coming up, because I was so anxious, I was like, what on earth? Like, that is insane that it was making me that anxious, and it really had no right to be honest. And as soon as I learned that, like, that truth that, like, helped me just, like, come back to a sense of clarity around that confusing information that I had learned a few weeks before, my acid reflux was gone by the next morning. I was in a great mood, where the day before I had been a little bit, like, sullen and not petty, but just, like, salty, I guess. And then by the next day, like, it wasn't even like the information was like good or like what I would want to see. It was just this feeling of like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to be confused, because like I said, it was really messing with me that the information I had received was contradicting what I intuitively felt. And so to realize like, nope, my intuition was on point, and really just recognizing that fractal of, no, I think I need to just really keep trusting what I think is true, sort of getting confirmation about that. I felt pretty good. So that happened, all that stuff happened like the day before Thanksgiving, and then fortunately by Thanksgiving I was in such a good mood, able to celebrate with my family. And I know that Thanksgiving has like, I have obviously mixed feelings about it, and I assume most people listening to this really do, but I'm never going to pass up a day to eat food with my family and just enjoy each other's company and be thankful for each other. So I'm always going to honor that holiday, even though privately and personally I'm thinking about what all the history of it is. Anyway, that's just an aside. So let's get into these lunations, shall we? So I realized that I had said the 12th because that's when the conjunctions start, the 12th of December. But truthfully, if you look at the main astrology tile on my Instagram, and it'll definitely have popped up on this YouTube video if you're watching it on YouTube. In the video, I try to like include these little slides on there so that you can sort of follow along. So the 2nd and 3rd, the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, we have really important aspects happening with the moon. And so even though I don't want to obsess like too much over the details, I do kind of want to just like really honor this intricate web that the moon is weaving throughout this month. So on the 2nd and 3rd, we have the Grand Water Trine, Venus in Scorpio, Neptune in Pisces, and the moon in Cancer. So this is a highly emotionally intuitive day We've had quite a few grand water trines throughout this year, and throughout the past couple months as we've had things in Scorpio really lining up with the moon being in Cancer multiple times. And this time we have Venus in Scorpio, which is like such a spicy placement. It's so powerful, the Venus in Scorpio placement. It can be quite almost, I don't want to say intimidating to people, but like Venus in Scorpio people can be a lot for a partner because they're really intense. They want to dive really deeply. They're super intuitive, and they don't allow for BS, and they like generally will pick up on any shadiness in people, and like they're not going to put up with it, because even if they wanted to, their body and their heart just like won't let them deal with anybody who's being shady. So that's a fun little placement that we're in for like the first half of December anyway, and fun that we get a grand water trine that like really pulls that into play, especially with the moon in Cancer, which is the moon's home, and so it's also highly intuitive, highly emotional, and incredibly sensitive. So the second and third, really sensitive days, but they have the potential to be so beautiful for you to really tap into your own heart and the absolute like profound depths of your heart. So I do feel like this is a lovely starting off point in the month, considering the more healing conjunctions that we'll have later on. I just feel like this, even though it's not a conjunction, it's just like such a beautiful trine happening. So then we go to the 5th and 6th. They both have grand fire trines, but with slightly different planets at play, which I find really interesting, because most of this year, anytime we've had a fire trine, it's been one or the other, but to have like a 2-day in a row kind of thing where, okay, so the 5th, it's Chiron in Aries, the moon in Leo, and Mercury in Sagittarius, making this really like beginning degree fire trine, meaning they're like in the beginning of their signs. So this is definitely like insight, fiery balls of insight falling from the sky is what I would say. Like Chiron has so much to do with healing. The moon in Leo has a lot to do with our like what our heart wants to pursue with passion. And then Mercury in Sagittarius is super clarifying and very tapped into information that evolves us. The 6th is another grand fire trine, but this time with Mars in Aries, the moon in Leo, and the sun in Sagittarius. Also at play in that fire trine is the south node in Sagittarius. So the day before, coming to some interesting thoughts really popping up in our head about ourselves and about others and about our place in the collective and likely our journey that we've been through. And then the 6th with Mars there and with the sun there, somewhat illuminating how to make use of that information and passion that we've come to the day before. Because on the 5th, it might even feel like you're having this energy, but you're like, I don't know where this is coming from, and I don't know where to put it, and like I feel this urge to do, but I'm not quite sure what to do. And so the next day, I would watch yourself on the 6th, because if you haven't like given yourself a really healthy channel to channel that fire through, then it might just like channel itself into any old thing or into, something negative. Has the potential for that. But I think on the 6th, I would say get creative on that day. I feel like that's so often my advice when there's like just extra fire in the air where you're like, I don't know what to do with this. Channel it into something creative. That's what I really try to do, is to just be like, okay, if there's this much energy in the air, let me put it to something that I'm gonna be like really thankful and that I'll like sort of see the the fruits of my labor in the coming days. And so then the 7th and 8th, we have a grand mutable cross. This, if you look it up on like astrocharts.com, astro-charts, it looks like a big red square on the chart, but if you looked it up on any other site, like it would just come up as a square. And I kind of wonder if certain, they would definitely register this. Anyway, so that has the north and south nodes coming into play there, which is like really such an interesting halfway point. I think that's the quarter moon actually on the 7th, because since the full moon and new moon are happening this season in Gemini and Sagittarius, then their squared counterparts are the other mutable signs of Virgo and Pisces. So on the 7th and 8th, there is this interesting changeability in the air. And it's an opportunity, I think, especially where it's, like I said, halfway between the points of these two eclipses, an opportunity to see how you've been course correcting between November 30th and between December 14th. Like, just this nice halfway check-in point of like, okay, so we have another week of like maybe considered the most intense aspects of this eclipse. How are we feeling? What do we want to change? What do we want to alter? And how can we at least start to move forward towards that? Like, okay, if we have an idea sort of going into these eclipses of what we're wanting to change and then how to change that, and maybe we're enacting that between the 30th and the 7th, that's, yes, 7 days might not seem like a lot to sort of put something into action, but it's enough to get a feeling as to if you're going in the right direction, and enough to know, like, okay, I think I need to adjust my sails a little bit. But the other aspects of the mutable cross can be extreme lack of like definitive clarity. It can be one of those days where you're sort of suspended in the air and not able to come to any strong conclusion. And I'm not even saying this as like being truly a negative aspect of it. It can feel negative if you don't like that energy, but if you just take those days for what they are, the 7th and the 8th, I think you can get a lot of enjoyment out of that feeling of suspension and that feeling of like not having to box yourself into any one tangible reality or tangible version of yourself. That's one of those days where, like, and especially where it's 2 days of it, you can change a lot about yourself within those 2 days. I would highly suggest using those days for healing work, whether that's intense meditation or ritual or energy work or something like that. I would absolutely recommend taking advantage of that, because let's move on to the conjunctions. So on the 12th, the moon and Venus conjunct in Scorpio at 26 degrees. This has to do with love and your values and what truly means something to you. So this is, of course, tapping into the heart center. And it's an idea, it's nice that these conjunctions kind of start out at a place where, to me, the heart center is indicated. It's funny because I honestly, in many ways, would associate Scorpio with the sacral center, but because it's Venus, it's really more about the heart center. But because it's Scorpio, it's about these like true shadowed depths of the heart, and so we're really like shining light on that, which is just so beautiful. It's lovely that every month we get to have the moon conjunct Venus, and those days always are some of the most profoundly beautiful, in my opinion. And so we sort of get of that conjunction flavor in every sign. You know, like one month it's moon conjunct Venus in Libra, like last month, and etc. going back. And I'm excited for next month with Sagittarius. I haven't looked if we'll definitely get a conjunction in that, because sometimes the way the degrees line up, they sort of like just barely miss each other. But I think we'll still get one in Sag, and I really hope so, especially because it would be, at least from what I'm looking at, it might be right around the galactic center of Sagittarius, at the 26th or 27th degree of Sagittarius. So anyway, Moon, Venus, just a lovely day to tap into your soft emotional self and what you truly want from your heart center. It's so easy, and I'm saying this to myself as well, it's so easy to try to logic our way out of what our heart wants. And even if we're not able to push that into a true manifestation in reality, we are at least allowed to be honest with ourselves about what we want. Again, there can be always like a moot point, a sort of irrelevance to what we want. But in terms of, like, can we actually do something to get it? But it doesn't mean that we're allowed to deny that that's what we want and say, like, oh, I'm not going to get that. Well, I didn't want it anyway. Like, it's a lie. You did want it, and you might still want it. And you're allowed to just honor that that's something that you deeply desire, even if you don't think that you can attain it. Just because that brings you closer to clarity around what would make you happy. So then let's get into the 14th. That's a big day. Moon conjuncts Mercury at 19 degrees Sagittarius. This is generally seen as shining light on our mind, increasing our processing power, increasing the connection between our emotions and our mind, our mental state, and also seeing how both affect the other. So how our mental state affects our emotional state, which is a big theme, I think, this month. But in general, because Gemini and Sagittarius deal so much with the mind and the higher mind, and the moon obviously is so much about emotions and hidden senses of self. So I think that this entire lunar nodal cycle, not just this month, but for the next full year, that there is an attempt to increase the clarity of connection between the mind and the heart. So just a few hours or so after the moon and Mercury conjunct in Sagittarius, we have the new moon eclipse in Sagittarius at 23 degrees. And this combined with that Mercury conjunction, because they're all close enough that they're really conjunct. So Moon, Sun, Mercury conjuncting in Sagittarius, really beautiful. This has to deal with clarity, truth, cosmic insight, and this is all centering around the crown center, the crown system. So, like I just said a minute ago, the galactic center is at 26 or 27 degrees of Sagittarius, roughly. So this new moon eclipse happening so close to that means that we're going to get a vast amount of downloads, honestly, up, the 2 weeks before, but especially on that day and the days surrounding that, and honestly, probably the 2 weeks after that. It's such an intense point of connection with the divine, connection with it's about alignment to center, to true galactic center. So when you sort of let yourself be moved in a gravitational way, be pulled towards the absolute center of the universe, as far as our galaxy, whatever as we know it, you surrender in this beautiful way that removes a lot of obstacles to being a clear and perfect channel for divine insight and creativity. Last year we had, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember the exact astrological situation around it, but I think it was when Jupiter was, maybe Venus and Jupiter or something were conjunct at the galactic center, I want to say. And it oh my gosh, that day I felt so fierce. I felt so clear in my knowing, and so clear in how to emotionally survive what I was going through at the time by channeling it into something beautiful. And that, I feel like, for all of us, whatever you were going through around that time last year, that was somewhere in November, I want to say. November was really, really phenomenal last year in certain ways. Like, to be fair, like, for me, a lot of emotional turmoil. But now I'm just like thinking about some of the things I went through last year. But anyway, and like how they sort of paralleled with some of the healing stuff that I was dealing with this month. But anyway, it's a really wonderful day to open yourself to. So we're all going to be wanting to, or rather benefiting from, a lot of meditation this month, especially with Sagittarius. You can receive so much insight, but if you're not aligned, it kind of comes in a little bit like disjuncted or jagged, and so it doesn't come in like smoothly, and it can be a bit like frustrating and irritating for some people, especially if they don't like want to find a place to put it. So anyway, let's move on to the 16th. Moon will conjunct Pluto, and then shortly thereafter Jupiter, both in Capricorn, forming a Capricorn stellium. This has to do with transformation and evolution, and it relates to the sacral center. This is the last time that the moon will conjunct Jupiter in Capricorn for, about 12 years, give or take. And especially where it's conjuncting it at the anaretic degree, which is the anaretic degree is the last degree of any sign. So the moon is conjuncting Jupiter at 29 degrees, the last degree of Capricorn. It's just so funny that it would conjunct it there, because it's kind of shining light on like what this entire Jupiter and Capricorn journey has been. And personally, I will say it's not been a bed of roses. It's been an incredible learning experience, and very humbling, and very grounding. But I have found myself feeling like for the past, maybe it was even since, I want to say like around March, and it wasn't just obviously pandemic has contributed to what I'm about to say, but I think it was more than that, and I do feel like a lot of it had to do with, I don't know. Again, I don't want to like put this on the astrology, but I was just thinking about how like last year, Jupiter in Sagittarius, there were so many moments where I was like, it's fine, I can handle this, I'm strong, I'm a warrior, I can just like keep going through this, it's fine. And I think it was a lot easier to like run, and I don't mean that in a negative connotation, I just mean to keep going forward and to be like, okay, I can feel my feelings, but I like can't let this hold me back from forward momentum. And Jupiter in Capricorn like really puts the reins on that, of like, no, we're gonna go slow and steady, we're gonna build it brick by brick, solid foundation, like no steps are allowed to be skipped, no expenses are allowed to be spared, we're gonna do this right. And boy were we given the opportunity to end time to do so. But I can't say that I'm sorry to see it go. In traditional astrology, Jupiter isn't considered happy at all to be in Capricorn. It's, I guess, one of its like least favorite signs. But we're about to go into Jupiter in Aquarius, and everything's going to change. So as I've said, that day is about transformation and evolution. When I go over this in the very end, you'll see that there's such a flow to this. It's like it's why I just wanted to focus on the lunations, because it feels just so intricately woven, the way things are sort of bridged back and forth between maybe some counterintuitive steps where you might be like, well, why would you go straight from like heart to crown to sacral to root? Like, how does that make sense? Because it's not the typical like root, then sacral, then solar. It's not linear. It's super it's just super intuitive and super personalized, I think, for like a sort of rhythm or a schedule as to, like, I feel like this would pair well with this. So after the 16th, on the 17th, we have the moon conjuncting Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius for the first time since, I believe, earlier this year. And I mean, it's finally in Aquarius for good this time, for a little while anyway. And this has everything to do with grounding the new reality in our emotional center, and down through our root. So the moon being this way that we like sense safety and security and our emotional needs being met, in order to go forth into this new reality, we have to ground at least the physically human part of ourselves to this new reality, which is definitely shifting. And so it's not, a fixed situation. It is in certain ways, because Aquarius is a fixed sign, but it's air, and so it's fixed air. So it's like it has these strange, almost contradictory elements of being still and yet being air that can't be contained forever. So you're just going to want to focus on your root that day. If you can get out in nature, do so. If you can get some grounding in, standing on the earth, I would highly suggest that. If you want to do a little bit of gardening that day, maybe plant a seed to commemorate Saturn going into Aquarius. I think that would be a lovely new way to start this chapter, by sort of birthing something that is full of life and has the potential to change the world. A tree or a plant has the potential to change the world, and I think this would be a lovely way to commemorate that. But again, up to you. The 20th, we have the moon conjuncting Neptune at, finally, 18 degrees of Pisces direct. This is the first time it will have conjuncted it direct in many months. And when Neptune is retrograde, it really contributes to fog and to deception even. And so Neptune going direct, I think it just went direct yesterday actually, on the 28th of November. So we're going to get the more pleasant aspects of Neptune, which I think we would do well to let ourselves be a bit swept away on the 20th by our imagination, our hopes, and our dreams, and really tapping into that third eye. So when you meditate, if you meditate on that day and you start to get these visions and just these like grand daydreams, let yourself swim in those. Let yourself completely be immersed by the feeling of being in that reality that you're imagining. And if in reality you are enjoying yourself, just like drink up every drop of that. Not a lot of people talk about the obsessive aspects of Pisces. People talk about the obsession of Cancer and Scorpio. I'm sorry, but Pisces is not an exception to that at all. Pisces love a little bit of obsession. They love to like be completely lost in something that feels like a drug, They like the fantasy, and they like to sort of escape, and that's absolutely like an element of obsession, is just being carried away. So on that day, I think just let yourself swim in those waters. Let yourself just be like completely hydrated and nourished by them. And then on the 22nd, we have something a little bit more intense that might test those lovely vibes that we've just attained, because the moon is conjuncting Chiron in Aries. So this is highlighting the pain that needs to be dealt with in order for those dreams to be accepted into reality, in order for us to ground those absolutely euphoric emotions and sensations that we just had with the moon conjuncting Neptune in Pisces, and seeing where we can heal our blocks against the receptivity of that beautiful divine vision. The next day, on the 23rd, moon conjuncts Mars in Aries. This deals with the confidence and power. By the way, both of these days, the 22nd and the 23rd, will deal with solar plexus issues. So on the 23rd, we're looking at where our confidence is lacking and where we have confidence, though. Like, I think that's equally important, of like, where do we feel really empowered in our lives? Where do we feel like we're able to do a really good job? And then are we holding ourselves back in any way in those arenas, just because in other areas of our lives we are lacking confidence? So I know for me, there's certain things in my life where I like don't even question it. I'm like, I know I'm good at that, and I know I can really handle that. But because of certain of the things that I'm insecure about, it's not that it destabilizes, but it let me just think for a second here. It puts those other parts at risk. It undermines, that's the word I was looking for. It undermines some of the strength that I have in the other areas. And I think that we're learning to trust ourselves even when we're scared to, especially when we're scared to, and understanding that finding our internal power is absolutely essential to moving into the people that we want to become, and into the parts and roles that we know we want to play in the coming collective revolution, if you will. The next day, on the 24th, on Christmas Eve, if you celebrate that, the moon conjuncts Uranus. It just tickled me so much that this would happen on that day, on Christmas Eve, because this is a really intense conjunction to happen. And for me personally, it's an intense conjunction because my Venus is at 6 degrees Taurus, so the moon and Uranus conjuncting at 6 degrees Taurus is, it's happened before and it's been intense before, but this time I think it's a little bit different because we will have had the ruler of Uranus, Aquarius. We will have had Jupiter and Saturn not only both entering Aquarius but conjuncting in Aquarius. So I think that Uranus is starting to feel a bit more secure in itself, and that's a good and a, well, I don't want to say a bad thing, but it's a good and an intense thing, because it's not sort of like shaking. It's not nervous about itself and about its power, because it's like before, if we didn't have anything strong in Aquarius, then where is Uranus pulling its power from while in Taurus? It's not really, I can see this in my mind, how to analogize this, but in any physical terms, I can't quite, so I'll do my best. But Uranus is visiting Taurus. It's in Taurus for a little while now, and it has been since 2018. It's definitely rocked my world, certainly, since it went into Taurus, and it's in there for I think another 4 or 5 years or so, and so it's been visiting there. But here we go. Is it getting sent any money or any care packages from its home of Aquarius? No, nobody's home. So Uranus is in this really foreign land, this place that it's not particularly comfortable in, this place that it like isn't exactly sure how to do what it naturally does in Taurus, because Taurus is like, oh, we don't do that here. Uranus is all about change and revelation and shocks and breaking with tradition. And Taurus has everything to do with groundedness, with steady and slow and tradition and old-fashioned and, plant the seed, wait a long time for it to grow. Uranus is like, let's plant the seed, let's zap it with some like high-powered laser to make it grow in a night. And Taurus is just like, we don't do that here. And so Uranus is just like a bit uncomfortable there, and it's not getting sent any love letters from home, anybody being like, we're so proud of you, and like, here's our, our home-cooked, your favorite snacks from home. So like, Uranus just isn't getting the right kind of like fulfillment, I think, to do its job in the most confident way of itself. Like, if you start to think of the planets and the signs as having their own sort of consciousness and will, then you see how they just sort of talk to each other and they sort of like live their own lives doing things. So and just like us going through different seasons of our lives, they're going through different seasons of the zodiac wheel. So this is all going to change, because for the next few years, for the next year we have heavy Aquarian energy, and for the next couple years we at least have Saturn in Aquarius, and then quite shortly after Saturn leaves Aquarius, we don't have a huge gap before Pluto will eventually go into Aquarius. So, and that's intense, but that's again, so my point is, it's going to have a lot of planetary power to pull from. Like, Uranus being used to having nobody sending it these care packages, and now all of a sudden Saturn and Jupiter are like, hey, we're home, like we can send you anything you want. Between the two of us, we actually have nearly infinite capabilities. So let us know what you want and we'll send it right over. And because it's the internet, Aquarius is the internet, it's able to send it super rapidly. There's no delay in that. So it's intense in that Uranus is going to be at its almost full power in Taurus now. So we're going to start seeing really intense change on probably environmental levels, on earth levels, having to do with agriculture and tradition and the ways that we break out of our own comfort zones and our own routines. But it's fun in that how it's really different to have a leader in charge who's in an empowered space versus a non-empowered space, where like, even if a leader is telling you to do something that's really difficult, if they're super confident about themselves and about what they're telling you to do, it's a lot easier to sort of take their guidance and advice, versus if they're like miserable and you're just like, well, do you even know what you're doing? Like, you don't seem like you're in a very good place. But now it's like, oh, okay, they're fully in their power, and you know what? They actually have like a really amazing plan, and they actually know so much, and they're so connected. So I really ought to listen to the methodology that Uranus wants me to employ in my life. So this is all about change, manifesting miracles, especially miracles, things that you just, and it's why I kind of like laughed about it being on Christmas Eve, because I just see it being such a miraculous day, even if it's not necessarily something where you're like in reality seeing a miracle happen. Like, of course I wish that something related to coronavirus would happen miraculously that day. I think it's a little too soon to hope for that, but I do think that in our lives we might start to just see the miracles all around us, and because we'll start seeing them more clearly, we will naturally attract more miracles to ourselves. So this also has a lot to do with the throat chakra, about clearing any sort of stagnation around our expression of ourselves into the world. If you look at the way that the energy centers did I say chakra? Did I say throat chakra? Forgive me if I did. But around the throat center. So if you look at the way that the energy centers line up, they really build on the sense of the physical and the connection to your inner creativity, and then your confidence with yourself, and then your connection to your emotions. And then once you've built a sort of solid foundation and alignment within those, then you're able to, through the throat, express those realizations and those beautiful creations into the world, to like a channel to bring them out of you through your voice, or even if you're not literally using your voice, just anything that you're doing and expressing yourself through in the world. So I think that the 24th is a lovely day to write, to sing, to create, to share something with the world or with those around you, or just even with yourself, saying things out loud to yourself, deciding on some mantras or some sayings that you want to start voicing out loud to yourself. Yeah, that's a fun day. I think it's going to be quite unpredictable. And I do think that can be an intense day, because Uranus does have to do with like shocks and revelations. But I'm just excited for it because it's a shift in what's been going on in Uranus and Taurus, which for me has been wonderful and so difficult. It has not been easy, but I have seen how the changes and the ways that it has shocked me and unnerved me and shaken my foundation have been absolutely essential to pushing me in the directions that I need to go for my own progress. And so fractally, I know that is what it's doing for the collective. And finally, and this is funny because I had meant for this episode to be really a quick one, and yet it's just as long as the others, if not longer. So we're getting the full moon in Cancer at 8 degrees on the 29th, and it's fun that this is happening just a couple days before the new year, and it's not closing out the eclipse cycle. I go by the sort of new moon situation, so I consider the eclipse portal to be the new moon before an eclipse and the new moon after the eclipses. So that meant that it was from mid-November during the Scorpio new moon and will last until the Capricorn new moon in mid-January. But, and actually on the 13th of January. But so the full moon in Cancer is this lovely point of completion, of nurturing ourselves, of seeing how we have or haven't nurtured ourselves, and really allowing that to inform what we need to change in 2021. So it's so nice that this sense of wrapping up, but also insight into what we want a new chapter to be, that's coming, just like I said, just a few days before the new year. It feels like a really generous gift, and almost like energetically, I'm hoping that we'll feel like we get to relax a bit on the 30th and 31st for maybe the first time all year or since pandemic. I'm just hoping that the 30th and 31st will be really, really divine, clear, flowing days to bring us into 2021. Because it's, 2021 is going to be super intense and I think so beautiful in so many ways, but it's just, I don't think that the shifts will stop. I don't think that the revelations will stop. I don't think that the challenges and lessons will stop. I just think that it'll become a little bit clearer what it is that the universe is trying to pull out of us and to get us to do. And so it'll be a lot of, hard work. But personally, I do better when I have clarity. Like, I feel like no matter what's going on, if I have clarity around how to proceed, how to act, how to work with myself to my best ability, and how to work with my strengths and how to allow for my perceived weaknesses, I feel like I can tackle anything. And I feel like 2021 will be so full of that increasing amount of clarity in so many parts of us. I hope that you guys have a really beautiful December, beautiful eclipse season, beautiful holiday season if you celebrate any holidays. I hope that you get some lovely time for introspection, for clarity, for healing. I hope that you come out of December feeling so ready for 2021. And even if you don't know what's coming, which none of us do, of course, I hope that you feel this sense of hope and optimism and curiosity about what lies on the other side of this year and this entire experience that all of us collectively have gone through this year. It has not been easy. It has not been simple. And I think all of us deserve to end this year feeling like in certain ways, despite what we've been through, feeling that we have come out stronger and better for it. Sending you so much love, and to you and your families, I hope that you stay healthy and tap into the deep sense of love within and all around you. Until next time, take care. Bye.